if you boil down, let's say, the purpose of life, if you go through the whole Quran, all 604 pages, 114 chapters of the Quran, and you try to find, what does the Quran tell me is the purpose of life? You can find three things, and they're sequential. The first thing is actually livelihood. And that's something that I think surprises a lot of people, because a lot of people who come from sort of either a Christian background or certain types of Christianity, maybe there's an association of the flesh, right? And everything to do with the flesh is kind of damned and not good and stuff like that. But we don't really have that in Islam, thankfully. Livelihood is a very, very important part of your life. And that has to do with, the food part and the coffee and the water and all the sorts of things that make up your normal human existence. Maybe we can say your bodily existence. That's a purpose that's found in the Quran. But there's more to life than that, as the Quran would tell us, or how Allah would tell us in the Quran. The second purpose that we can find in the Quran, it has to do with gratitude. And so it naturally flows from the first one. Because when you're going about making your livelihood, procuring your needs, doing all the things that you want, sometimes you get what you want, and sometimes you don't. And so when you get what you want, there should be some sort of gratitude. There should be some object of gratitude, some way for you to express that you're really thankful that, it could have been otherwise. You could have left deprived, but in fact you weren't. You were satisfied, you were satiated, you got what you needed, you got what you wanted. So this has to do with worship. That's the second purpose. But then even beyond that, there's a third purpose that we can find from the Quran, and that is stewardship. Because once we have kind of gotten what we need, secured our livelihood, and we've expressed our gratitude for it, okay, then there's the needs of others. Other people have to get their livelihood, and they have to procure what they need. And so there's an aspect in which we have to take care of everybody else and be aware of everybody else's needs and wants. These three purposes that are all in the Quran, if you want the references, you can come to me later, they really correspond well to a story of the Prophet Muhammad, ﷺ, where he explained kind of three levels of our religion. So the whole thing, someone comes to the Prophet ﷺ and they ask him, Muhammad, explain to me, what is Islam? And he answers, and he says, he goes through what's known as the 5 pillars. Islam, which we can translate maybe as submission, it kind of has to do with the outward conformity, kind of like the bare bones, bare minimum sort of practice of this religion. It's made up of 5 things, okay? There's the testimony of faith, there's the ritual prayer, there's fasting, Ramadan, there's zakah, which is kind of like giving off a portion of your wealth if you qualify, and there's pilgrimage. That's what Islam is at the very, very, very base level. That's what it's about. But the questioner wasn't done. The questioner said, okay, tell me about faith. Tell me about Iman. This is a higher level than just doing the outside rituals. And so the Prophet Muhammad, he responded, he said, well, that's to believe in 6 things. We believe in the Creator. We believe in the angels. We believe in revelation, in the prophets, etc., etc. Destiny. These sorts of things. That's level 2. But there's one level left. And that's what's on all of the cards that's on your tables. That's ihsan, which we could translate, I think it has a better explanation in the brochure, about excellence, right? Striving, going above and beyond. But when he said this, he didn't just drop the word and leave it there. He actually gave a really, really interesting explanation. He said that, what does it look like? What is excellence? What is ihsan? It's to serve the Creator as if you see Him. And if you can't do that, then it's to serve the Creator knowing that He sees you. Because we believe in our tradition that having some omnipotent Creator, right, with consequences that might or might not be eternal, is very important to keeping people honest, and is very important to keeping people on the right way. Now, what's interesting, if you notice something important about the quote I just mentioned from the Prophet Muhammad, he said that excellence is either serving the Creator as if you see Him, and if you can't, then doing it knowing that He sees you. That's sort of like, I call it the cosmic cop sort of imagination of what the Creator is, it's not all there is. It's actually not even the best. It's like bare minimum that some people out there need it just so that they don't harm other people. But that's not what we're going for. We're going for something that's higher than that. There's a higher motivation, and that is true devotion. Worshiping the Creator as if you see Him. Worshiping the Creator based off of fear, it's nothing compared to worshiping the Creator that's based out of love. Love is always higher. Love is always a better motivation. And that's what excellence looks like. True excellence is serving the Creator out of that love. Now, what does it look like? Okay, that's a bunch of fancy theoretical speech. A couple stories to illustrate this. I had a teacher when I was in Medina. I lived in Medina for 5-6 years. And they told me a story. They said that this is actually very relevant to college students. So they were in school from the time that they were young, okay? And they were always competing to be the best. And so whenever they would get their exams back and their grades, they would always sort of like, oh, what'd you get? I did better than you, this sort of thing. One day, they get their exams back, and they're all marked up or whatever. And one of the two had left an answer on his exam blank. Now, this is very strange, and the friend had never known his friend to ever do this before. So he said, what's going on? How come I've never ever seen you leave an answer on an exam blank in your life? Why did you do it? He said, listen, when I was in the middle of the exam, I was thinking about what the answer could be. And while I was doing that, my pen rolled off my desk and fell onto the floor. So I reached over to get my pen, and my eyes happened to fall on the paper of my neighbor. All I saw was one word. It was written on their paper, and the whole answer came back to me. And I was afraid. I was afraid that if I wrote down that answer and got the points for the test, that I'd be cheating, and that the Creator, Allah, wouldn't be happy with me. So I decided to leave it blank. If you live in other places, there's some crazy stories about this sort of stuff. One time, there was a scholar in Saudi Arabia who someone gave him a car. Saudis, oil money, this sort of thing, right? So he's given literally the keys to a car. He tries to refuse. So, no, come on, this is too much. What are you guys doing? But eventually they force him. So he takes the keys. He's got his car. It's a fancy car. I don't know, Range Rover, Audi, something like that. And then someone comes along 5-10 minutes later, and they say, hey, Sheikh, so-and-so just got married. He's like, really? That's amazing news. Here, I got a gift for him. And he gives the keys right back. Excellence. No one's watching, no one knows. It's about you and about what you do, and hopefully doing things out of love.